live now. There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Happy New Year. It is January 4th, 2023, and we are back live with another daily dose here on MCBA's LinkedIn, as well as going to be streaming on as a podcast here coming up soon. But hey, everybody, it's good to be back. Precious, aloha. How's it going?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to 2023. Isn't that a crazy number to say as a year?
I remember back in the day when we were in school and you'd have to write the new year every time, and I'd always screw it up. So thankfully everything updates now, so it's much easier.
Absolutely no, but it's super cool to just have a whole fresh year. I'm really excited to see what the cannabis industry is going to get into this year. I know what we have up our sleeves here at MCBA for 2023, and we're going to get into a lot of that. But we're so happy to relaunch the Daily Dose. Again, just bringing you content, headlines, interviews on things happening in the industry, things making news, things making noise, and things that are actually just providing resources for those who are still looking to learn and just find out how to really enter the industry, how to really engage, and how to really support social equity through and through. So with that, I will get into today's topic, which is still rumbling, the launch of the New York City recreational market with the opening of the first dispensary of its many that are soon to come, Housing Works Cannabis Co. I'll give you guys a little background about the story, and then Kaliko, we can dive right into it. But New York is one of those states that allow nonprofits to be able to apply for licensing for a cannabis business, and a couple of them were awarded. Now, if you've been keeping up with New York, you know that there's been a bunch of moving pieces, mainly that no one really believed that this dispensary would open before the end of the year. I remember the governor saying we're going to have dozens open. I think she said about 20 opened by the end of 2022. And many of us were like, it's kind of strange being that, you know, a lot of the processes that were set up have not happened yet. But they were able to get one in, and it was crazy. I'm in Jersey, and you're still hearing people going to it. Day one, lines wrapped around the corner, the second corner, the third corner. I read that they did almost 500 transactions just on that first day, and they opened at 4:20. They didn't even really open at like a 10 a.m. type of situation, allowed sales there. So that's just a little taste, a snippet of what the New York market really has to offer. And as we know, there are still licenses that are waiting to be awarded. About 36 or so, I think number 39, correct me if I'm wrong, have been awarded. But again, New York, we're supposed to supply those awardees with the locations. And these are some of the things we're still waiting to find out how that will turn out. Also with the fund, the $200 million fund, how that's going to be deployed, and is it fully there? You know, these are other things we're waiting to find out. Nonetheless, they got one in, and it's looking like it's going to be, you know, a good sign. So that was my takeaway from the New York opening. Excited. I know there was some beef there with New Jersey. There's a little Twitter action happening where New Jersey was firing shots and mentioning how we had 12 dispensaries open on our day one. And New York fired back and said, ours want just corporate interest though. So there's the battle of the East Coast happening, which was kind of funny to see. But yeah, let us know your thoughts on the New York opening in the comments. But what are you thinking, Kaliko? What does this?
Well, I definitely think it's interesting to watch that sibling rivalry of New York and New Jersey always throwing shots at each other. But now you have the regulators actually talking about which one's better for equity operators and which one's better for equitable outcomes in the industry. So I think that's awesome that we are in a place where you have regulators bragging about whether they're doing enough for the industry, right, and calling others out if they're not. Yeah. I think it is really interesting, like you said, that Governor Holkowitz said that they were expecting to have 20 dispensaries open by this time. They're starting with one. But, you know, the other sort of promise that New York has laid out is that the first 200 licenses are all going to go to social equity applicants, right? So this is part of their very strategic rollout of these licenses in the state of New York to make sure that it is social equity folks, people who have been disproportionately impacted by prohibition, that ultimately get the first shot at making money here. So it was really cool to see Housing Works be in the sort of queue to be able to be one of the first ones up. What I found really interesting, and I didn't realize until I started doing a little bit more research, is Housing Works is actually a nonprofit that's non-cannabis. So they actually work on housing and development projects in New York to help folks get into housing, to work on housing policy. It's a nonprofit specifically aimed towards that, but now they're getting into the for-profit side of things, actually building out a dispensary, right, and helping to funnel that all through. So I thought it was really interesting that the very first license that starts up in New York is also a nonprofit that has nothing prior to legalization, anything to do with cannabis. I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things when the licensing even came out, about who can apply. We saw that these nonprofits were able to, come in and be able to transition to cannabis. I know a couple other nonprofits that are also been awarded that are also not in the cannabis sector that are looking to pivot. Again, you'll read that a lot of these nonprofits are going to use the funds that they acquire from cannabis sales to continue to service the work that they're already doing. And I think that speaks volumes too, because we're in the nonprofit space. If you know anything about nonprofit, put non in front of the profit, emphasis on the non. Okay. Sometimes it's extremely hard to get funding to do a lot of this good work that nonprofits have to do. And I think this is just a direct way the city thought to empower a lot of these organizations already. And it's good to see it, like, again, one of the first ones to launch was in the nonprofit space. And I know there's a lot of anxiousness over the next couple that'll come through. We know that there's a current injunction on licensing right now in New York due to a lawsuit. Many of us anticipated lawsuits. Many of us still anticipate more lawsuits to come, that really stalls the process. But it looks like OCM is just pushing forward. They're doing what they can to go around, the injunction and focus on the areas that could launch, focusing on figuring out that turnkey situation that will provide those applicant winners their real estate and all the operational things they need to get started. I'm waiting to see if there are any more lofty promises coming out. Like, I'm really curious as to, and MJ Biz alluded to it in their article, when we will actually see these next set of dispensaries opening, because you're also looking at a supply chain problem if that timeline is really spaced out, right? Because those growers up there have been growing cannabis for some time now. A lot of people remember those hemp licenses and, those conditional grow licenses were awarded a long time ago. And a lot of them now have to think about storing cannabis and possibly even destroying it if they do not get those out those doors. And to funnel it just to one dispensary, we all know that's not true. So we heard a lot about delivery. New York and delivery. They're going to launch delivery first, delivery before retail. So again, in true New York fashion, a lot spurting out, trying to figure out what will actually come to fruition has to be what we see and probably not what we read. But it's 2023. What to expect, I really don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we're in a similar spot as we always are when we're having these conversations about, like, it's a big step forward while we're still not taking all the steps forward, right? It's
Yeah.
like, it's awesome that we're here. New York is going to be one of the largest markets in the country, if not the largest market in the country later on down the road. So it's great to see that we're here. It's great to see that they are prioritizing Black and brown businesses and organizations in their licensing process, but still not going quick enough, still not getting people the access they need as quickly as they need it. And I was just looking at that MJ Biz article here, and when they say state officials announced on December 7th the signing of the first lease for a turnkey conditional adult use retail dispensary license at a location near the Apollo Theater in Harlem, but it's still not known when that will open, right? So there are still people in the process of trying to get there, but are still not having the doors actually open yet. And they had stated actually issued the first 36 retail licenses back in November, and Housing Works is the only one that has opened up to this point.
Yeah, see, and there's a whole bunch of mini nuggets in that article too, and I posted it in the comments, so feel free to read along and chime in. But also, a lot of the things that New York did, which was again their fire backshot on Twitter to New Jersey, is that, they said there would be no co-locating with those medical operators who were there at least for 3 years. And many people feel many different ways about it. Again, if you have corporate interests, if you're in the MSO world, you're like, well, I'm going to miss out on that first mover advantage. As you can see, Housing Works is doing phenomenal. I'm pretty sure they will continue to do so as the singular recreational dispensary in all of New York. But I think people have to realize the importance of that. And it can be traced back to our national equity report on how that, first mover advantage for medical operators entering into the recreational space, which is essentially what New Jersey did, also has its negative effects. Like, again, I always was one of the people who, when New Jersey opened, I was like, this seems a little premature, because up until maybe I would say a week ago, maybe two, since April, there were only multi-state operators in the recreational space as more licenses were coming online in New Jersey. And that's something to consider, because between July and September, New Jersey did $116 million in cannabis sales. So it's very important as states come online when and who all is going to be able to participate, because that does become it can create a huge imbalance in large operators and small operators and the timing that they have to really secure their space in the market. So again, 2023, a lot can change, but New York is just one of those places that you can't blink too quickly or something else is going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's really important to underline what you're talking about with the co-location of medical dispensaries, right? Basically, the idea that if you had a medical license in place prior to the legalization of adult use, that you would get basically at first dibs and
Yeah.
also be able to start your retail license in conjunction with your medical license, right? And
Yes.
so basically allows people to jump in front of the line while other people who have not been in the medical space are working to get their license, right? And so what Precious said, when we did our National Cannabis Equity Report last year and really looked into what pieces of policies actually affect the equitable outcomes, it is giving the head start to these medical operators because they're most often the most well capitalized because they've been around for so long, and most often are connected to these multi-state operators who are like coming from these big well-funded entities, right? So it is really important that what New York is doing here and putting multi-state operators and large entities on the back burner for right now does allow these new entities and these brand new shops to be able to open up, get their legs underneath them before the large money and the well-connected folks get on board. Because I mean, if you think about it practically, the MSOs already have like dominant market share in most of these markets, largely because of the first mover advantage, right? It's not like that is going to go away. The money's still going to be there. They still have the ability to come into a market, start eating up M&As. But what you do is you allow these small operators to actually start and have a foothold in there and build communities and then see which one of those brands are actually going to last for the long term, build that intergenerational wealth, and actually give them a chance to start rather than killing them in the crib and allowing these MSOs to come in, basically drown out and suffocate the marketplace to where the small businesses are not able to actually get on their feet. And then these large entities are just eating them up through mergers and acquisitions. And before you know it, these same MSOs that have been dominating all these other markets have dominated another market, right? So I think it is really important that New York is taking this slow rollout approach, even as much as it might be aggravating for some. It's very much an intentional, purposeful thing to make sure that people that we represent here at MCBA ultimately get the opportunity that we're working for every day when we're working on these policies.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And I don't know if people just or maybe regulators, whoever, but this is not a new sort of situation. You can refer to other states and see the impact of what some of these regulatory decisions or policies have had. What it looks like when multi-state operators were able to co-locate and immediately begin recreational sales with medical sales. You can see what it's like when it didn't. You can see what it's like when equity licenses went out first versus any other. So again, there's a bunch of even outside of New York, we have Maryland coming online. There's Virginia is still looking to figure out its way to really going through legalization. So there's going to be a lot of other conversations to have with different states, and hopefully they'll look at New York too and say, "Hey, look at what happened here. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can different to continue to support Black and brown people in this industry." Because if you're reading a lot, if you're really in touch with cannabis folks, the word consolidation is being used a lot. Okay. The word consolidation is being used a lot, and you can take that in many different facets. But I take it as that there is, like you said, through M&A, there's going to be some sort of major consolidation over the course of several years, I think, pending federal legalization, pending SAFE, pending so many other federal policies, pending the descheduling as to, who really is able to sustain in this industry without those policies there to keep us going. So something to think about. Again, be sure to chime in with us on New York. You can follow us here on the comments. Drop a line in our email if you wanted to comment on your thoughts on the launch of the New York market, and we'll just keep monitoring it.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, and also obviously giving some plugs to folks. We're going to be starting this as a podcast, so make sure you're checking out on iHeartRadio, iTunes, I'm assuming Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you're looking for the Daily Dose. Make sure you're subscribing, because we'll be taking these episodes and putting them up on the podcast feed regularly. And then we want to make sure that you guys are getting involved with the organization as well, right? As we're looking at all these states that are legalizing and starting to implement rules and regulations, it's really important that we continue to have Black and brown voices at the table to make sure that as these things roll out, they're getting the input from our community, right? So if you haven't already, make sure you're signing up for the MCBA newsletter. Precious does an awesome job getting that out every week with up-to-date information about what's going on in the organization as well as in the industry. Then it's also really important that if you're already a member or want to be a member, you can sign up to actually become a member of one of our member committees. So we have a policy committee, which we actually use that as a way to be able to talk about what's going on in these regional states and be able to provide feedback. So if you're in one of these states that's newly legalizing and want to be able to help affect the outcomes of those things, joining our policy committee or joining our grassroots committee are a really great way to be able to connect with other people who are in your region, like-minded folks, to be able to utilize MCBA resources, then ultimately take that back home and make sure that you're able to lobby on behalf of more equitable policies. So I want to make sure that you guys are signed up for the newsletter. On there, we're sending out links to sign up for our committees that we're just reopening them this month now that we have a brand new year that we're starting on. So really exciting stuff. And I guess I'd give a plug. We got a new class of board of directors that just recently got elected. We're just announcing that internally. We'll be letting that out externally in the weeks to come. So really excited about sort of all of the new stuff we're working on at MCBA. I know, Precious, you've got a small business education series webinar planned for later this month as well, right?
Yeah, we have a lot going on this month. We are kicking off again our small business education series, and we're just getting down to the basics. We're going to talk about business plans, because that does affect the trajectory of your company for a long time. It affects how you're building your team, licensing review, and even investing. Those are essentially your holy grail, your Bible of how this business is supposed to survive. And it can seem overwhelming putting together a cannabis business plan, but we've got some industry experts ready to talk about it, ready to break it down. So please be sure to sign up. Again, you can find all this information in our newsletter. We'll also drop it in the comments. Just stay active with us. We are back on Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram now and get information from there if you're not just on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Again, hard to miss. It would be really hard to miss. So definitely stay in tune. Go to our website, plug into our newsletter, and you'll get all the information there. That you can always find me at Precious at minoritycannabis.org. You can always find Kaliko at minoritycannabis.org. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. And most importantly, if you're interested in being a member, feel free to reach out to us as well.
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to be running a donation drive through the end of February as well, looking for folks. New year, same mission. We're still on the same path, trying to make sure that we can make a more equitable cannabis industry. And we're doing that through policy advocacy, making sure that we're providing education and programming to our community, and ultimately providing networking opportunities too. We got some in-person events we're planning for later this year. And as a member, you'll get access to all of those things. So it's a lot of great resources you get access to when you become a member of MCBA. But if you donate, it helps just as much to keep us going and keep the lights on. So thank you, everybody, for your support. Really excited about what's to come in 2023. And big ups to you, Precious, for all the stuff you got planned coming up here. Yeah. Really looking forward to doing more daily doses here in the coming days. And make sure you guys are subscribing on all the podcast platforms. So appreciate you, Precious, and appreciate everybody listening. Hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.